Okay, I'm going to talk about the analyses we did, and we'll start by talking about centrality, which is just a basic measure of a node's relative importance in a network. Um, there's different ways of measuring that importance. One way is looking at the node's degree. Degree just refers to the number of links between a node and other nodes. And if we look at the distribution of that, we see that the network follows this long-tailed shape, and if we plot a log version of that, a log-scaled version of that, we see that it follows this power law distribution, and this is characteristic of just many real-world networks, and because of that, it has this suggests just a bunch of interesting properties of the network. Which I won't go into too much detail here, but this is just a better representation of the network as a whole than using this normal unscaled look at it. So there's different centrality measures. You can pause the video and look at these here. This is just a table sorting the top 25 nodes based on their in degree, so how many links that go into them. You can see here that Big Bad has the most links going to it. It's a very popular trope. And this is the correlation between, these are correlations between the various centrality measures. And if you just kind of look at the definitions and look back at this, you'll kind of understand why there's such a strong correlation between the degree of a node and its eigen centrality. Okay, so kind of more to the more specific stuff. One thing we looked at was the happiness of trope titles. So the motivation being that tropes in general are just these abstract objects that encapsulate a lot of information. And so we wondered, from just the trope title alone, is this representative of the trope? How much this happiness? How happy is a trope? And what does that say about it? And so we took this data set from the hedonometer, and which is a project here at UVM. They calculated happiness scores for 10,000 words or so, and we use that to score each of the words within a title based on this process here, which you can pause and read about. And then we got this average happiness score for each title. If we look at the distribution of all of our titles scores, I see that it just follows this normal curve, and that scores are very much neutral, centered around a score of 5.4. We wanted to see that if that correlated with the centrality measures, and we see that it doesn't. The motivation behind this just being maybe happier trope titles are more important in the network or more linked to, but excuse me, that's not the case. And so the other thing we did was we compared different categories of tropes and their happiness. We see that there's some small differences and in the means, and still very average neutral emotional valence. And we ran an ANOVA just to see what if those differences were significant or not. We see that a few of them are, but again, how meaningful this was, we weren't too sure about, considering that a lot of the words we used to create these scores were very neutral. So what we did next was we took those words out based on the standard deviations of how many standard deviations each word was away from the mean. We only included words that were one standard deviation or more away from the mean, and so that kind of polarized our words and left us only with titles that were potentially happy or not happy, rather than just big clump of neutral. And so we looked at the distribution of that between. We looked at the correlation between that and the centrality measure. There's still no correlations This is just a distribution of those happiness scores. And then the next thing we looked at was the happiness of gendered trope titles. So like we compared female and male trope titles against each other. And we see that male titles have higher variance in their scores versus female titles, and that female titles have a little bit of a higher score. But the distributions were kind of, they weren't normal, so we ran a bootstrap to see if the differences were significant, at least to do a more proper comparison using a t-test. And so this is the distribution of that, and we did get a significant difference between male and female happiness trope title scores. And one plausible reason for this is encapsulated by this trope here: men act, women are. This is just the idea that in the media, women take on kind of a more narrow set of roles, whereas men have like a wider range of roles. And so maybe that explains some of the variance we see. You can kind of pause and read more into that if you want to. And so we had a bunch of other ideas and paths that we just didn't have time to explore, or just were kind of half-baked and didn't, that would need just much more time to look into. You can pause and read about that too. But this is just our first attempt at a theory of like why tropes are worth studying anyways. You can, again, just pause and